When Jerry Nash moved from downstate Illinois to the suburbs of Chicago, he felt his new home was missing a big piece of his weekly routine.
My wife and I had been member owners of Common Ground Food Co-op in Urbana, where the University of Illinois is, and we loved that place. And we looked at it as a community center, a place to shop where we knew a lot of people, and we knew that more of our profit was staying locally instead of going somewhere else.
Each week, Jerry and his wife, Kathy, would shop at their co-op, taking pride in knowing their money was cycling back into the local economy.
The reason I love being part of a co-op is just that feeling of community that I get as I shop at the store or as I talk about it with somebody else. I feel like I am actually taking part in improving my community by supporting more local vendors, more local farmers, because I know that then that money stays here in the community. And it actually makes me proud to know that I'm supporting more local business and local families who actually could otherwise be struggling if it wasn't for a co-op.
Moving to a place as large as Chicago suburbs, Nash expected there would be plenty of co-ops near their new home, but there were none. So the couple decided to start one, Prairie Food Co-op. The process is lengthy since much of the starting capital comes from individuals who pay a small fee to buy into the co-op and become an owner. Several years of fundraising have brought Prairie Food Co-op more than 960 owners and hopes of opening in the spring of 2021. Once they do, however, they face a grocery landscape that is ever-changing. John Steinman is a journalist and author of Grocery Story, The Promise of Food Co-ops in the Age of Grocery Giants.
It really is this network of people who are trying to create a very different type of economy that's not based on who's got the deepest pockets, who can grow to the largest size. It's very much a matter of every type of institution and organization working together to help make these types of co-ops possible.
Today, there are more than 250 co-ops across the U.S., along with independent family-owned grocers, all competing with big box retailers for a slice of the market. Those small stores are a throwback to around 100 years ago, before the shift from local grocers to big box change seemed to happen overnight.
In the early part of the 20th century, the grocery stores operating across the country were generally small, independent, family-owned businesses. From what I learned, it wasn't uncommon to be on a corner of a city or a smaller community and have 4 different grocers on every corner, all owned by different independents. And when A&P first was formed in actually the late 19th century, they began creating a new format of grocery store, which was the chain grocer. And in the early part of the 20th century, a company like A&P had grown to have hundreds of stores across the country.
The bigger these chains got, the more power they had to monopolize the market.
A&P was bringing in food for cheaper than any other grocer could, and was able to also push the prices on the shelf down by choosing a model that left the grocer with very little profit, but because of the volume that they were bringing in and selling, it was a relatively lucrative business model. Between 1919 and 1932, the top 5 grocers in the country were receiving from 4% of America's grocery dollars all the way up to 30% in just 12 years.
Lower prices attracted more consumers to larger retailers, driving the growth of companies like Kroger to eventually Walmart and today, Amazon. But at what cost?
What that model of low cost, low price food began to do was to begin to push the people producing our food and the people manufacturing our food and even the people just distributing food to those grocers. It started to push them to a place of also having to rely on very slim margins in their businesses. In some cases, as we now see today, it's left a food system whereby farmers are most often, in fact, 75% of what are considered to be small farms in the U.S., it's left them reliant on off-farm income in order to sustain their farms. So while the consumer end, it seems great that we can walk in and buy a gallon of milk for $1.25. At the end of the day, that's not enough to compensate a farmer fairly to be able to produce, in this case, dairy or produce any food in a way that allows them to produce it well and allows them to continue to farm.
These low profit margins ripple across the industry, affecting the financial stability of farmers, distributors, and store employees. Co-ops, on the other hand, aim to support these players by focusing on sustainable suppliers, paying living wages to employees, lessening environmental impact, and donating unsold items to food pantries and shelters.
The idea of a co-op is that it operates in the interests of the people who are shareholders in that co-op. And so as a shareholder, you are effectively an owner. So one of the most readily available examples would be a credit union, where we might not realize that a credit union is in fact a cooperative. It's a consumer co-op that's owned by the people who are using, in this case, the financial institution. So in a way, these are community-owned banks where we're not really at the mercy of a large bank headquartered in some distant city. We're actually an owner of the financial institution, most often operating in our communities. It's not possible for the grocer to gouge their customers or to take advantage of their customers, because at the end of the day, the customers at a co-op are the owners of that store.
As more consumers examine the impact of shopping choices and grow to be more aware of the food production chain, Steinman says the expectation of what something costs versus what it should reasonably cost to responsibly produce is shifting.
It simply costs more to pay a local farmer growing strawberries than it does strawberries that are being grown, say, in California, where the people working on those farms are often migrant laborers being paid a very bare minimum and often living in relatively deplorable conditions.
To become an owner or a member of a co-op, it costs a one-time fee ranging anywhere from roughly $30 to $200, depending on where you live. However, you don't need to buy in and be an owner to shop at one. Being a member at a co-op allows you to have certain benefits, like board voting rights, decisions and operations, and members-only deals and discounts. So why shop there? Jerry Nash of Prairie Food Co-op says many locations are offering a larger variety of organic and conventional basics. The stereotype of a co-op as an expensive grocer that sells only niche offerings is outdated.
We'll have things that more common drugstore and grocery stores carry, because we do want to be a one-stop shop. And Prairie Food Co-op itself, we're actually going to carry some mix of conventional items so people don't feel they have to go to a store to get something maybe they've grown accustomed to.
In the past, local co-ops didn't have the same purchasing power as large retailers because they couldn't afford to buy huge amounts at one time. Steinman says that's evolving as a network of more than 140 co-ops across the country pool their resources to buy mainstream products.
This isn't your hippie aunt and uncle's co-op anymore. We're going to have to innovate. We're going to have things like grab-and-go items. We're going to have to maybe even think about offering delivery or at least pickup.
Unlike many nationwide retailers, co-ops also actively focus on reducing food waste and giving back. Each year, roughly 40% of the food produced in the U.S. is wasted, costing businesses, farms, and households roughly $218 billion annually, according to the Center for Biological Diversity. Local co-ops often partner with food pantries and organizations to feed the hungry instead of tossing damaged or slightly past-date items into a landfill. Once open, Prairie Co-op plans to donate more than 24,000 pounds of unsold food to pantries per year. In the end, though, Steinman says that it's up to each consumer to re-examine their shopping habits and where their money is going, to think about the true cost behind each item.
At the end of the day, none of us are immune to the impact of a grocery store. And I'd like to think that we can continue to move in a direction where we say, you know what, I want to place a responsibility on my grocery store to give back to my community, to make sure that the food dollar I spend at the grocery store is going to keep circulating in my community and not get sent off to some head office in some distant city that is nowhere near where I live, or what's increasingly the case, sent off to some other country where the owner of my local grocery store is based.
You can find out more about John Steinman's new book, Grocery Story, The Promise of Food Co-ops in the Age of Grocery Giants, at grocerystory.coop.com. To learn more about Prairie Food Co-op and its initiatives, check out prairiefood.coop.com. Visit our website at viewpointsonline.net And subscribe and listen to our show on iTunes and Google Play. Our writer-producer for this segment is Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price.
June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and the Alzheimer's Association is joining forces with the Ad Council in a new campaign, encouraging families to talk about memory loss and other potential warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. Ruth Drew, Director of Information and Support Services for the Alzheimer's Association.
Close family members are typically the first to notice memory issues or cognitive problems, but they are often hesitant to say something, even when they know something is wrong. This new campaign is aimed at empowering families to have these conversations before a crisis occurs.
Titled Our Stories, the new campaign targets family members and features real stories, encouraging people to notice the signs, trust their gut, and start a conversation. It's an essential first step on the path toward managing disease-related changes. Families can start with ABC, assess changes, begin a conversation, and contact the Alzheimer's Association for help at alz.org/ourstories.
Trying to sell your old car? Instead, donate your vehicle to Heritage for the Blind. Pickup is free and your donation is tax deductible. Just call 1-800-835-1478. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats, whether they run or not. Donate your vehicle and you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call 1-800-835-1478. That's 1-800-835-1478.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook to learn about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on iTunes. Plus, you'll always find podcasts of our segments and information about our guests at viewpointsonline.net. Join us again next week for your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.